What if the reason you feel overlooked, underestimated, or even invisible is not a flaw within you, but a flaw in the game you've been taught to play? You were told to be nice, to be transparent, to lay all your cards on the table. But what if those very habits are the slow burn that consumes your influence and dismantles your defenses? The Stoics warned of this centuries ago. They taught us to stop chasing the fleeting shadow of approval and start forging a power so fundamental it never needs to ask for permission. Today, we will strip away the illusions. We will face the uncomfortable truth of why you give your power away and uncover the timeless strategies to reclaim it without ever raising your voice. If you are ready to stop living on someone else's terms and begin shaping your own life with discipline, wisdom, and an unshakable presence, then let this be a silent promise to yourself. A promise that from this moment forward, you will choose growth over comfort, truth over illusion, and mastery over mediocrity. Rule 1. Let them underestimate you. Observe the world around you. See how most people exhaust themselves in a frantic race for recognition. They speak too much in meetings, rush to display their accomplishments, and desperately try to convince everyone of their competence. But true strength is not a storm. It is the quiet gravity that holds the storm at bay. It is found not in the need to be noticed, but in the profound ability to sit in stillness while others misjudge you, to quietly let them write their flawed narratives about you. As Marcus Aurelius reflected, the best way to defend yourself is to not be like your enemy. You do not need to mirror the noise of the crowd. You can choose the discipline of patience. You can let them believe they have read the book, when in reality they have only glimpsed its cover. Think of the last time you met someone who felt no need to fill the silence. They simply observed. They did not compete for attention. They seemed untroubled by the opinions of others. There is a magnetism to that kind of presence. It draws you in, precisely because you cannot figure it out. This is where being underestimated becomes your greatest strategic advantage. When you release the need to prove you are the smartest person in the room, you liberate yourself from the exhausting performance of being constantly on. At the same time, you allow others to relax. They lower their guard. They reveal their intentions, their strategies, and in that unguarded space, the true opportunities appear. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." The bravery here is not in confronting every challenge head-on, but in holding back when your ego begs you to leap forward. It is the courage to allow misjudgment, knowing it is temporary and serves your long game. The people who truly succeed, in life, in business, in influence, are rarely the ones broadcasting their every move. They are the quiet collectors of small victories, positioning themselves with care, and striking only when the impact will be impossible to ignore. This approach also frees you from unnecessary battles. If you are constantly proving yourself, you will fight over every minor opinion, defend every trivial point. But when you allow others to think you less capable than you are, you sidestep petty conflicts. You conserve your energy for the moments that truly define you. You create a space between their assumptions and your reality, and in that space, you are untouchable. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." When you understand your own strengths on a profound level, you no longer require the constant validation of showing them off. This inner security allows you to sit back and watch as others rush to expose themselves. And they will, because most egos cannot bear being underestimated. As Plato noted, wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something. To master this art, become comfortable with saying nothing when nothing needs to be said. Your restraint will be mistaken for weakness, and that is exactly the point. Because when the time comes to act, the contrast will be unforgettable. Ultimately, letting people underestimate you is not about playing small. It is about playing smart. It is about revealing your abilities at the precise moment their impact will be greatest. And when that moment arrives, you will not need to announce yourself. The results will speak for you. Master this, and you will find that sometimes the surest path to power is the one that appears as though you are not walking it at all. Rule 2. Charm beats truth. Consider the nature of influence. Is it the person with the sharpest facts who truly sways the room? Or is it the one in whose presence others feel seen, understood, and valued? We believe logic is king, but the human heart beats to a different rhythm. Facts may conquer a mind, but only feeling can move a soul. More often than not, the one who wins people over is the one who makes them feel something positive. They don't win by wielding absolute truth like a weapon. They win by becoming someone others want to be around. When people feel good in your presence, they will open doors for you that force could never break down. The Stoics understood this, though they warned against its careless use. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are rooted in calm, kindness, and goodwill, those qualities will spill into your voice, your movements, your very presence. You will not need to declare your intentions. Your aura will communicate them for you. This is not the hollow art of flattery or the pretense of agreement. True charm is the quiet overflow of a disciplined inner world. It is the skill of making people feel respected and heard. As Carl Jung described, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When you create a genuine connection, that transformation lingers long after the conversation, more powerful than any argument you could have made. Here, the power of charm becomes strategic. When people believe you are good, their defenses lower. They stop searching for hidden motives. And in that space of trust, you can guide the interaction, not through manipulation, but through the natural influence you've earned. This is where the Stoic principle of self-control becomes paramount. Epictetus taught that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you maintain a calm tone and a warm demeanor under pressure, you demonstrate an inner discipline that draws people toward you. Think of a heated discussion where one person remains serene, listens, and even smiles. They change the entire dynamic. Others may still disagree, but they will respect the composure. Over time, that respect blossoms into influence. Charm often outperforms raw truth because truth delivered without emotional intelligence can feel like an attack. But truth wrapped in empathy is received with an open mind. To cultivate this, shift your focus from, "What do I need to say?" to, "How do I want them to feel?" Even in disagreement, you can make them feel safe. The safer they feel with you, the more they will listen. Of course, as the Stoics insisted, charm must be anchored in integrity. Without it, it is mere manipulation. With it, it becomes a tool for harmony and leadership. As Seneca wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." That is the soul of authentic charm, not a mask you wear, but a reflection of who you are. And here lies the paradox. When you stop trying so hard to prove you are good and simply act in ways that feel good to others, they will arrive at that conclusion on their own. And once they have, they will follow your lead not by force, but by choice. Charm does not replace truth. It opens the door so that truth can finally be heard. Rule 3. Be a mystery on purpose. Recall a time you met someone truly enigmatic, someone you couldn't place, couldn't categorize. One moment, they were open. The next, unreadable. And instead of losing interest, you found yourself thinking about them long after they were gone. This is the silent gravity of mystery, an invisible force that commands attention without ever demanding it. People are irresistibly drawn to what they cannot fully understand. As Jung noted, every interaction is a transformation. By keeping parts of yourself in reserve, you allow this transformation to unfold organically, revealing just enough to invite a reaction, but never the entire story. The Stoics valued moderation in all things, including self-revelation. If you share every thought, every feeling, every plan, you give away the color of your soul before anyone has earned the right to see it. Let us be clear, this is not a call for deception, but for discernment. It is the wisdom to choose what to reveal and when. In a world of relentless oversharing, a touch of unpredictability is magnetic. When you are always available, always the same, people stop paying attention. They believe they have you figured out. But when you vary your rhythm, sometimes engaging deeply, other times pulling back, you spark questions in their mind. That mental loop keeps you present long after the conversation is ended. This is an act of self-command. You decide when to step forward and when to step back. In doing so, you become less of an open book and more of a story they cannot wait to read. Psychologically, this works because the human mind is a story-seeking machine. It abhors a vacuum. When you leave gaps, their imagination rushes in to fill them. This is why, as Epictetus advised, it is best to be silent for the most part. Silence invites interpretation. Interpretation fuels curiosity, and curiosity keeps you relevant. The most compelling figures in history were rarely the ones constantly explaining themselves. They left space for wonder. They were selective with their words, deliberate with their presence. This was not by accident. It was strategy. They understood that mystery creates a gravitational pull. This does not mean being inconsistent in your values. Your moral compass must remain steady. It is your expression that varies. Sometimes you show the world your boldness. Other times, you let them sit with your quiet. It is the dance between the two that holds their attention. As Seneca wrote, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." Part of that journey is learning restraint, resisting the urge to make yourself entirely known. The truth is, when people feel they have you figured out, they stop investing. But when they are never quite sure which side of you they will meet next, they remain engaged, curious, and respectful. Purposeful mystery puts you in control of your own narrative. It strengthens your influence and, more importantly, it protects your peace. Not everyone deserves to know everything about you. The less they know for certain, the more they will keep coming back, hoping for another piece of the puzzle. And in that quiet pull, you hold a power far deeper than constant exposure could ever grant you. Rule 4. Show results, hide the process. Think of the great masters, the quiet innovators. Their breakthroughs often seem to emerge from nowhere, fully formed, as if by magic. But this is no illusion. They simply understood a timeless principle. They worked in silence, far from the crowd, and only revealed their creation when it was undeniable. In a world obsessed with broadcasting every step, there is incredible power in moving quietly and letting the results speak for themselves. Marcus Aurelius gave us the perfect mantra for this. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The same is true for your work. Stop announcing the masterpiece you will create. Simply create it. When you expose your process too early, you invite a chorus of opinions, doubts, and even sabotage. You give others the chance to copy you or undermine you. As Carl Jung observed, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That becoming is a sacred, personal journey, and it does not always belong on a public stage. Protecting your process is not secrecy born of fear. It is the wisdom to let something grow without interference. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Notice, he did not say, "First, tell the world." Keeping your methods private gives you the freedom to fail, to experiment, to change course without the crushing weight of observation. Imagine you are planting a seed. You do not unearth it each day to show the world its progress. That would kill it. You let it gather strength in the darkness. You nurture it in private. Only when it breaks through the surface does the world witness the life you have been cultivating. Your ambitions are no different. Sharing too soon tempts you to perform progress instead of making it. Hiding the process forces you to be honest with yourself, for you work not for applause, but for the integrity of the outcome. There is also a profound psychological power in the unveiling. When people cannot trace your steps, they cannot anticipate your arrival. Your success lands with the force of a revelation, because no one saw it coming. It resets their perception of you entirely. When you present only the finished product, you control the story. You frame it from a place of strength, focusing not on the stumbles but on the resilience built along the way. In a culture addicted to updates, your silence will be a disruption. People will wonder. They may underestimate you. Let them. While they are guessing, you are building. In the end, this is about discipline. It is the quiet confidence that you do not need to prove your progress at every turn. You need only prove it once, when it is done. Until then, guard your work as a craftsman guards his tools, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the craft itself. Rule 5. Perfect isn't memorable, flaws are. Picture someone who seems to be carved from marble, flawless, polished, and perfect. Impressive, yes, but also cold, distant, ultimately forgettable. Perfection erects a wall. It gives people nothing to connect with. What we remember, what truly stays with us, are the moments the mask slips. That unguarded laugh, that honest admission of a struggle, that glimpse of vulnerability. Those are the threads that bind us to one another. Stoicism teaches that the pursuit of virtue is a lifelong journey, not a flawless performance. When you present yourself as perfect, you deny others the chance to see your growth, your humanity, your capacity to rise after a fall. And in doing so, you make it harder for them to trust you. Perfection feels like a fortress, not a bridge. It was Carl Jung who said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that acceptance must include our cracks, our shadows, our beautiful imperfections. Showing the world only your polished surface may earn you applause, but revealing that you too have stumbled, that you have risen from the dust, that is what earns you trust, loyalty, and a place in their memory. People do not relate to perfection. They relate to resilience. Consider the characters who linger in your mind, the heroes and villains of story. Are they paragons of virtue, flawless in their design? Unlikely. They are memorable precisely because they are layered, defined by their weaknesses, their doubts, and the moments they falter. It is these fractures in their composure that give their triumphs meaning. This truth holds in life as well. If all you ever present to the world is an image of perfection, you leave others with nothing to pursue, no mystery to unravel. But if you offer them the bulk of your story while leaving a final chapter in the shadows, you cultivate an intrigue that endures. This is not a call to confess every failing, but to reveal just enough humanity to be approachable, to be understood. A controlled imperfection, a fleeting glimpse of struggle, a brief show of emotion, makes you real. And in the landscape of human memory, the real will always outlast the perfect. The Stoics understood the peril of vanity. As Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In the same way, influence is not lost by the one who is flawed, but by the one who craves a flawless facade, never allowing others to see the truth beneath. People may admire skill from a distance, but they connect with honesty up close. When you share a glimpse of your humanity, you grant others permission to embrace their own. That shared recognition becomes a bond, and a bond rooted in authenticity carries more weight than the most polished image you could ever project. In the end, perfection may shine brightly for a moment, but it is the subtle cracks in the mask that stay with people for a lifetime. This subtle art of revelation is mirrored in the art of restraint, particularly in the use of silence. Silence is a language most people cannot speak. It unsettles them, creating a void they rush to fill with words, often revealing more than they ever intended. This is why those who master silence hold an unseen advantage. They do not waste energy in the frantic exchange of words. They speak with purpose, and then let the pause do the rest of the work. Marcus Aurelius advised, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This is more than a moral compass. It is a strategy. The less you say, the more gravity each word possesses. When your speech is selective, people learn to listen, for they know you do not speak unless it matters. As Carl Jung observed, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." Silence is part of that secret order. When emotions run high, your composure becomes a quiet force, forcing others to confront their own thoughts. Silence is not passivity. It is active observation. It is a space where you study the subtle shifts in body language, the tremors in a voice, the small cracks in an opponent's logic that are lost in the noise of conversation. In any negotiation, the most powerful move is often the pause that hangs in the air, creating a pressure that compels the other side to reveal more than they planned. This discipline gives you control not over others, but over yourself, allowing you to respond with reason, not impulse. Like the rests in a musical score, the pauses give shape and meaning to the notes. They create the tension and release that form the melody. In conversation, it is the contrast between your stillness and your speech that creates impact. Just as you learn to control what you say, you must also learn to control how you are perceived. Human nature is swift to categorize, to place others into neat boxes, friend or foe, ally or adversary. It is an ancient survival instinct. But in the modern theater of influence, these labels become cages. Therefore, the most potent position is not on either side of the line, but in the subtle space between. Here, you are close enough to share ideas, yet distant enough to remain unpredictable. This ambiguity keeps others off balance, granting you an advantage few think to cultivate. This is not the art of duplicity, but the science of adaptability. And adaptability, in the Stoic sense, is the highest form of resilience. A fixed role makes you predictable, easy to counter. A fluid identity makes you impossible to anticipate. Imagine a corporate arena. If you position yourself as an open rival, you invite aggressive competition. But if you are a helpful colleague, complimenting their work and supporting their ideas, their defenses lower. They open doors. All the while, you are observing, learning, and preparing. When the right opportunity appears, you can act decisively, and they will never have seen it coming. You become approachable, yet hard to pin down, and when they cannot read you, they cannot predict you. This ambiguity is a powerful tool, but its most potent application lies in making others feel at ease before you make your move. In any arena of competition, the human spirit armors itself at the first scent of a threat. Perceive an advance on your position, your influence, your territory, and the walls go up. The wisest strategy, then, is not one of aggressive pursuit. It is one of disarming calm. It is to first make others feel so utterly at ease that they see you not as a rival in their path, but as an ally in their success. You help them, you praise them, and you integrate yourself into their world. Their success becomes the very thing that distracts them from seeing yours. By making them comfortable, you reframe the relationship from one of competition to collaboration. And when you finally make your move, it does not register as an attack. It feels less like a surprise and more like a natural evolution. By the time they recognize the shift in power, the new order is already settled. Once they are comfortable, once their defenses are down, the final stage of influence begins, becoming indispensable. Within every human connection exists a spectrum of influence. At one end, departure is inconsequential. At the other, the removal of one person causes the entire structure to tremble. The most lasting power resides at this far end of the scale. It is not forged in titles or fear, but woven quietly, almost invisibly, by becoming essential. You provide a value so unique, so consistent, that over time, reliance grows without notice. You bring clarity to their confusion, calm to their chaos. You become the solution they did not know they were seeking. Jung's theory of the shadow suggests that people avoid acknowledging their dependencies, for it feels like a weakness. By strategically stepping back, you do not abandon them. You simply force this hidden truth into the light. You allow them to experience your absence. In that quiet space, they are confronted with a new reality. Without you, their world runs less smoothly. Their decisions are less certain. Their burdens feel heavier. And once that truth is felt, it cannot be unfelt. You become not just helpful, but fundamental. And that is the most enduring form of power there is. You do not become necessary by demanding it. You become necessary by being the one who can be trusted to deliver when it matters most. Consider a great mentor or leader you have known. At first, you may not have realized the extent to which you relied on their insight. But the moment you had to navigate a challenge without them, the difference was immediate and palpable. That is the power of creating dependence. The absence is not merely noticed, it is felt, and that feeling reshapes the other person's perception of you. In practical terms, this may mean consistently solving a problem they dread, offering a perspective they can find nowhere else, or connecting them to opportunities they could not access without you. Over time, they cease to look for other sources. They come to you automatically. Then, when you step back, even for a moment, they feel the void. They may not admit it openly, but the internal thought takes hold. I need them. Dependence is built through habit. When your contribution becomes an unshakable part of their routine, they are no longer just choosing you. Their world is structured around you. Remove a key piece of that structure, and the entire edifice shifts. Sometimes, it even destabilizes. Stepping back need not be dramatic. It could be as simple as not volunteering for a task you would normally take on, letting a meeting run without your input, or delaying a customary check-in. The goal is not abandonment. It is to create a moment of contrast. You are allowing them to experience in real time what life feels like without your involvement. That is a powerful teacher. And here lies the long-term benefit. When you return, your value is not just understood, it is reinforced. They do not simply think you are helpful, they know they operate better with you there. That knowledge shapes all future decisions. They are more likely to include you, consult you, and keep you close, because they have already felt the alternative. The Stoics believed in the power of measured action. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." In the realm of influence, this translates to needing less visible effort to maintain your position. When you have built true dependence, you no longer have to push to be included. Your absence ensures they will pull you in. That is the quiet advantage of this rule. In the end, creating dependence and then stepping back is not about trapping someone. It is about making your contribution undeniable. It is about building your role so deeply into their world that removing you would mean restructuring everything. And when people realize that, they will hold on to you not out of obligation, but out of the simple instinct to preserve what makes their life easier, smoother, and more successful. Rule 10. The debt they can't forget. There are acts of generosity so profound they remain with a person for a lifetime, not because you remind them, but because on a fundamental level, they know the debt can never be fully repaid. That knowledge creates a subtle, lasting connection, one that can shape how they see you, how they treat you, and the decisions they make in your presence. This is not about crude control. It is about the quiet gravity that forms when you have given someone something of real weight, whether an opportunity, support in a critical moment, or a solution no one else could provide. True favors, the kind that become unforgettable, are not transactional. They are not offered with strings attached. They are genuine acts of assistance, delivered at the precise moment of greatest need. And because they are so rare, they leave a deep imprint. When you give in a way that alters the trajectory of someone's life, even slightly, you create a transformation in the relationship itself. They remember not just what you did, but who you became for them in that moment. And whether they realize it or not, they begin to measure their own actions against that memory. The Stoics valued generosity, but they also understood human nature. As Seneca wrote, a gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer. A sincere favor, offered without visible expectation, creates something more powerful than gratitude. It creates a lingering sense of responsibility. The other person knows they have received something of immense value, and while you may never mention it, they will feel its quiet weight in all their interactions with you. Think of it as planting a seed in the mind of the receiver. You do not tend to it daily, nor do you hover over it, yet it is there, rooted. Over time, it shapes their perception. They may not say it aloud, but when decisions are made, when loyalties are tested, that memory plays its part. They will hesitate before acting against you. They will lean towards supporting you, even when they do not fully understand why. And here is the key. You never demand repayment. You do not have to. By leaving the debt unspoken, you allow it to live naturally within their conscience. The discomfort of knowing they cannot fully repay you keeps the connection alive far longer than a direct obligation ever could. In a sense, its power lies in its lack of closure. Ultimately, the debt they cannot forget is not about keeping someone in chains. It is about shaping the relationship into one where loyalty grows without force. You gave without asking. You helped without boasting. And in doing so, you became a fixture in their personal history. And once you are part of someone's history in that way, you are very difficult to erase. Rule 11. Let them compromise for you. One of the most revealing moments in any relationship, personal, professional, or political, is the moment someone willingly bends their principles for you. It begins as a small, almost invisible shift. They might share information they normally keep private or overlook a standard they usually enforce. But in that act, something profound occurs. They have made a choice that subtly binds them to you. And it is not because you forced them. It is because you created the space for them to do it of their own accord. You cannot control another's values, but you can cultivate an environment where those values begin to bend naturally in your direction. This is not manipulation. It is influence. And influence is born of consistency, trust, and making people feel safe enough to lower their defenses. When someone compromises for you, they justify it to themselves in a way that protects their self-image. They might tell themselves you are different, that the situation is unique, or that it is only for this one time. But on a deeper level, they know they have taken a step they would not take for just anyone. That realization does not just change how they see you, it changes the entire dynamic. Human behavior is not always ideal. People make exceptions for those with whom they feel a bond, and once they have made one exception, they are more likely to make another. This is where loyalty deepens, not because they owe you, but because they have invested a part of themselves in the connection. The more they invest, the more they stand to lose by stepping away. The key is to never force this moment. You do not corner them into breaking their rules. You let it happen organically. You might simply be there at the right time, listening when they need to talk. You might be the one who understands their frustrations without judgment, offering a perspective that makes them feel safe enough to speak more openly than they usually would. Before they know it, they have crossed a small line, and in doing so, they have created a shared secret, a mutual understanding that sets your relationship apart. As Seneca said, one of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood. Understanding someone so well that they feel comfortable bending their own norms for you is a form of closeness, but it also has a lasting psychological effect. Human beings are wired to protect their investments. If they have compromised for you once, protecting you becomes a way of protecting their own judgment. Over time, this creates a bond far more resilient than one built on words or promises alone. They are not loyal simply because they like you. They are loyal because they have already acted on your behalf in a way that sets you apart. To turn on you would be to admit they compromised for nothing. In the end, letting people compromise for you is not about making them weaker. It is about allowing them to connect with you in a way that is uniquely theirs. It is about becoming the person they feel drawn to support, even when it means bending their own rules. And once that line is crossed, they will guard you as they guard themselves, for in their mind, the two have quietly become one. Rule 12. Break groups from the inside. Strong groups rarely fall to outside attacks. More often, they crumble from within. History, philosophy, and daily life demonstrate this time and again. Unity is powerful, but it is also fragile, especially when trust begins to crack. There is no need to break down the walls if you can loosen the bricks one by one. And the bricks are loosened not with confrontation, but with subtlety. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." If a group is the obstacle between you and your goal, a direct assault is often unnecessary. Instead, you can allow the group's own structure, personalities, and hidden tensions to do the work for you. All that is required is the smallest shift in perception, and human nature will do the rest. People often operate on the assumption that they fully understand their allies, their friends, their teammates. But these assumptions are fragile. By introducing a mere hint of doubt, something small enough to be dismissed, yet sticky enough to linger, you give their own minds the tools to question one another. Once the seed is planted, it does not take much for suspicion to grow. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." This is the essence of fracturing an alliance from within. You are not directly causing conflict. You are shaping how its members see each other. It might be a quiet remark. "I'm sure they meant nothing by it, but did you notice they didn't defend you in that meeting?" Or perhaps it is an observation left hanging in the air. "Isn't it curious how much time they've been spending with that other group lately?" You are not telling them what to think. You are simply inviting them to notice. And the human mind, once intrigued, will continue to pull at that thread. Seneca observed, "We are always complaining that our days are few and acting as though there will be no end of them." In the same way, People in close alliances often act as if their unity is permanent. They forget that relationships, whether between two people or 20, are living things that can weaken if neglected. By introducing a sense that the bond is not as solid as it appears, you compel members to reevaluate. Sometimes they overcompensate, exposing their own insecurities. Other times, they quietly withdraw, weakening the entire group without realizing their role in its decay. The most effective part of this strategy is patience. You do not attempt to tear down the entire structure in a single move. That is when people notice and rally together. Instead, you let the doubt settle in, and then you step back. They will replay moments in their minds, question motives, and begin to see signs of betrayal that may not even exist. In time, the alliance ceases to be united against an external foe. Its members are too consumed with guarding themselves from one another. In the end, breaking a group from the inside is less about destruction and more about influence. You are not tearing down the walls. You are letting time, perception, and doubt do it for you. And by the time the dust settles, the alliance will have undone itself, leaving you to move forward without ever having thrown a single stone. Rule 13. Reflect their doubts back at them. Every person carries a private collection of insecurities, small shadows that follow them, no matter how confident their outward appearance. For some, it is a quiet voice that says they are not good enough. For others, it is a lingering doubt about whether they truly belong. These insecurities shape their words, their choices, and their interpretation of others' actions. Most people spend a lifetime hiding them, building layers of personality and performance to keep them out of sight. But those insecurities are often the deepest point of connection you can have with someone. Not because you exploit them, but because you acknowledge them in a way that feels safe, subtle, and strangely comforting. Insecurity lives in the unconscious, driving behavior in ways the person themselves may not fully understand. By reflecting it back gently, you bring it into the light, not to humiliate them, but to say, "I understand this about you, and I still value you." It is a quiet mirror, one that allows them to see themselves without feeling exposed. The art lies in subtlety. You never drag an insecurity into the harsh light of day. That only breeds defensiveness. Instead, you weave it into a compliment, a gentle observation, or even a shared laugh. You might say, "You have a way of surprising people who underestimate you," which validates both their capability and the hidden truth that they often feel underestimated. They will remember the praise, but they will feel the understanding beneath it. Carl Jung's work on the shadow self reminds us that people resist facing the parts of themselves they dislike. They project strength and competence to keep those parts hidden. But when someone else notices without judgment, it can be oddly freeing. It can even lead them to open up further, because the need for performance has been lifted. This is where conversations deepen, trust strengthens, and alliances form in ways that feel unshakable. In a professional setting, this is an incredibly effective form of influence. When a leader acknowledges a team member's doubts in a supportive way, it creates profound loyalty. That person will work harder for the leader who understands their challenges and still believes in them. In personal relationships, it can transform the dynamic entirely. Instead of a source of competition, you become a safe harbor, a place where they know they do not have to perform. This kind of influence is durable because it is tied to emotion, not transaction. People forget what you give them in material terms, but they do not forget how you made them feel about themselves. When you help someone feel seen and accepted in their imperfect humanity, that memory becomes part of your relationship's foundation. And when people are deciding who to trust, who to follow, or who to protect, they turn toward those who have made them feel that way. The Stoics, however, would caution that this skill comes with responsibility. It must be grounded in virtue. As Epictetus said, "It is the nature of the wise to resist pleasures, but the foolish to be a slave to them." The pleasure here is the temptation to use someone's insecurity against them. That path yields short-term gain, but destroys long-term trust. The wiser path is to use your understanding to strengthen bonds, not to weaken them. Over time, that integrity will magnify your influence, because people will know your insight is paired with loyalty. Even in conflict, reflecting someone's doubts can shift the dynamic. If you acknowledge their perspective in a way that quietly touches on their insecurity, they are more likely to reconsider their position without feeling attacked. In a tense negotiation, you might say, "I know you've taken risks before that others didn't believe in, and they have worked out well for you." It validates their courage while subtly reminding them that they have faced skepticism before, potentially making them more open to your point of view. When you combine your awareness of someone's insecurities with genuine respect for their strengths, you create a complete picture that feels both balanced and trustworthy. They are less likely to hide from you, and far more likely to see you as someone who truly understands them. Over time, this approach creates a kind of emotional imprint. Even if the person does not consciously realize why they trust you, they will feel it. They will think of you in moments of uncertainty, not because you have given them all the answers, but because you have shown them they do not have to hide their questions from you. That is rare. And in a world where most relationships remain on the surface, what is rare is powerful. Rule 14. Keep your hands clean. There are moments in life that demand a decisive act, an action that will create ripples, provoke reactions, and perhaps even ignite conflict. These moments are unavoidable if you aim to lead, influence, or protect what matters. But a crucial truth separates those who endure from those who burn out. You do not always have to be the one who carries out the action. The most strategic move is often to set the stage, guide the outcome, and allow others to handle the execution. In doing so, you preserve your position, your credibility, and your ability to influence the next move without carrying the stain of the last one. Aristotle wrote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." This is a reminder that you can be deeply involved in shaping an outcome without attaching your name to the act itself. You can think through every angle, anticipate the results, and design the steps, but permit someone else to be the visible agent. This is not about evading responsibility for the sake of image. It is about protecting your capacity to act again tomorrow. If you are constantly associated with the harshest cuts or the most unpopular changes, you will quickly find doors closing to you. Plato observed, "A wise man will desire to be ever with him who is better than himself." This means surrounding yourself with capable people who can carry out what needs to be done without you having to step into the center of the storm. It is part of the architecture of influence, building a network of trusted actors whose skills can handle the immediate action, while your role remains that of the strategist, the one whose vision keeps everything aligned. When you are in a position to make difficult calls, you must ask not only what needs to be done, but also who should be seen doing it. As Aristotle noted, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. This humility applies to execution. There are situations where, even though you know the right move, you are not the right person to be the face of it. Your involvement might inflame tensions or create a perception that distracts from the result itself. Plato offered another layer to this when he said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." Power is not just the ability to act, it is the wisdom to know when not to act directly. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is remain in the background, shaping conditions, so the result is inevitable, regardless of who carries it out. You become the architect, not the laborer, the composer, not the performer. The music still exists because of you, but others play the notes. Consider politics, business, or any hierarchical system. If you are the leader who must personally wield the axe for every difficult cut, you will inevitably be cast as the villain in every story. But if you are the leader who sets the vision, builds consensus, and allows the right hands to carry out the hard work, you remain the steady guide, not the executioner. This allows you to continue navigating the ship without having to quell a mutiny at every turn. There is another dimension to this art of detachment, the wisdom of plausible deniability. Aristotle observed that he who has never learned to obey cannot be a good commander. This speaks to understanding the chain of action from both ends, knowing when to follow the current and when to quietly direct its flow. When you guide without overtly controlling, others take ownership of their actions. They come to believe they are acting on their own decisions, even if you have subtly shaped the path to that choice. And because the decision is theirs, you do not carry the public cost. Keeping your hands clean does not mean avoiding responsibility. It is not an invitation to turn a blind eye to what must be done. It means being involved enough to ensure the right outcome, while removing yourself from the direct line of fire in a way that keeps your influence intact. To avoid the hard moves entirely is cowardice. To direct them without unnecessary exposure is wisdom. Some will call this manipulation, but it is closer to stewardship. As Aristotle said, the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. The education here is the discipline of restraint, learning to hold back the impulse to be visibly in control of every action. The sweet fruit is the longevity of your leadership and the preservation of your ability to act when the stakes are at their highest. Many leaders fear being seen as inactive. They believe that if they are not visibly acting, they are losing relevance. But the wise know it is often better to be the hand behind the curtain than the one holding the sword in public. Visibility is not the same as power. In fact, the more visible you are in every hard decision, the less room you have to maneuver later. Plato understood this dynamic well when he noted, "The beginning is the most important part of the work. The beginning is where you set the plan, gather the right people, and create the conditions for success. Once that structure is in place, you can step back and let it carry the action forward. By the time the work reaches its conclusion, your role may not be obvious to outsiders, but your influence is embedded in every step. In the long run, this method affords you greater freedom. You avoid becoming the lightning rod for every controversy and preserve your relationships on all sides of an issue." Aristotle's teaching, "Wishing to be friends is quick work, but friendship is a slow ripening fruit," reminds us that relationships are built over time but can be destroyed in a single, poorly handled conflict. Keeping your hands clean protects those slow-built connections from being sacrificed for a momentary gain. Ultimately, Plato's question, "What is honored in a country will be cultivated there," speaks to the legacy you build. If your legacy is that of a reckless enforcer, you will cultivate fear and resistance. But if it is one of a steady strategist who can guide outcomes without leaving unnecessary scars, you will cultivate loyalty and respect, a far more stable foundation for long-term influence. Keeping your hands clean does not mean never getting them dirty. It means being deliberate about when and how you do. It means knowing that your ability to shape the future depends not just on your capacity to act, but on your ability to still be standing, still be trusted, and still be in the game when the next great decision arrives. Rule 15. Listen until they reveal everything. Most people are far more eager to be heard than they are to listen. In conversation, they are merely waiting for their turn to speak, not absorbing what is actually being said. Because of this, the rare person who truly listens becomes magnetic. People can feel when your attention is fully on them. It is disarming. It makes them open up, often far more than they intended. In a world that rewards constant talking, the one who can remain silent is the one who learns the most. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. This attitude, seeking truth rather than dominance, transforms how you engage in conversation. You are no longer waiting for an opportunity to prove you are right. You are creating a space for the other person to reveal what is true for them. That space, held with patience, can yield insights that no amount of forceful questioning ever could. When you give someone the floor without interruption, you learn not only about them, but about your own instincts, the urge to correct, to defend, to interject. By holding back, you develop discipline, and you witness how their words unfold naturally. Given enough time, people will often tell you everything you need to know, sometimes even the things they wished they had kept to themselves. When you resist the impulse to fill silences, you hand the other person a subtle but powerful pressure, the need to keep talking. Most people are uncomfortable with long pauses. They rush to break the quiet, and in doing so, they often wander into truths they were trying to avoid. This dynamic works in every setting: negotiations, personal relationships, even casual conversations. A short, well-placed question, followed by genuine silence, can draw out far more than an hour of rapid-fire inquiries. Something as simple as, "What happened next?" or "How did that make you feel?" can open a door they didn't even realize they were approaching. Seneca said, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." In conversation, this means controlling your impulse to speak. The more you remain in command of yourself, the more others will reveal. This is not manipulation. It is patience. It is about giving someone enough room to trust you with their truth, even if they do not consciously intend to share it. Over time, being the person who listens deeply builds more than just knowledge. It builds influence. People begin to seek you out, not because you always have advice, but because they feel lighter after speaking with you. And ironically, the less you talk, the more weight your words carry when you finally do speak. In the end, listening until they reveal everything is not about tricking someone into a confession. It is about understanding the power of a quiet presence. The less you rush to fill the void, the more the truth will rise to fill it for you. And in that truth lies the kind of understanding that gives you an edge in both connection and decision-making. Rule 16. Be predictable until the moment it matters. People feel safest when they can predict you. They find comfort in knowing how you will react, what you will say, and where you stand. This predictability gives them a sense of security, but it also gives them a measure of control. If they can anticipate your every move, they can shape their own actions around you. That is why the wisest approach is to be steady most of the time, but to always keep one card hidden, something they cannot account for. When the stakes are high, that is when you break the rhythm. The sudden shift catches them completely off guard. Consistency in your behavior is a source of strength. It builds trust and creates a baseline for how others interact with you. But true mastery comes from knowing the precise moment to disrupt that pattern. In the moments that matter most, predictability is a weakness, and unpredictability becomes a weapon. To others, this break in your pattern might look like chaos, but to you, it is part of a larger design. It is the intentional moment where you step outside your usual pace, voice, or approach to achieve maximum impact. It is the sudden silence when they expect a reaction, or the decisive move when they assume you will hesitate. The Stoics valued steadiness, but they also understood the power of timing. Epictetus taught, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." This is patience, but it is also strategy. It means holding to your normal rhythm until the exact moment when breaking it will serve you best. Just as a soldier waits for the right time to advance, you wait until the opportunity is most favorable to act in a way they never saw coming. Consider how this plays out in relationships or negotiations. If you are always accommodating, they expect agreement. If you are always firm, they expect resistance. Either way, they prepare for your usual stance. But the moment you flip the script, agreeing when they are braced for a fight, or standing your ground when they are sure you will yield, you force them into unfamiliar territory. They lose the comfort of their plan and are now reacting to you instead of controlling the exchange. The key is balance. Too much unpredictability, and people will stop trusting you. Too much consistency, and they will stop respecting your edge. The art lies in being dependable enough to build security, but surprising enough to keep them from ever feeling entirely safe in their assumptions about you. In the end, being predictable until it matters is about holding the power of surprise in reserve. You are not erratic. You are deliberate. You are calm water most of the time, but when the storm comes, you can shift the tides without warning. And that single, well-timed change in course can alter the outcome in ways that constant motion never could. Rule 17. Make your presence felt in your absence. Most people believe power is something you exercise in the moment, when you are present, speaking, and directing others. While that is one form of influence, the most enduring kind does not depend on being in the room at all. The most powerful presence is the one that is still felt when you are gone. It is when people pause before acting because they can imagine what you would say. It is when they measure their choices against your standards, even without your voice in their ear. When they adjust their behavior because the idea of you is still in the room, you have achieved a kind of influence that travels with them, far more valuable than the kind that disappears the moment you leave. Over time, if you consistently embody certain principles, your character begins to stain the people around you, not in the sense of controlling them, but in shaping the very framework they use to think. You become part of their internal compass. They may not even realize it, but when they are weighing a decision, they are asking themselves, what would they do? That is presence in absence. You have embedded yourself into their decision-making process without needing to be physically there. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." If you live in such a way that people associate you with improvement, clearer thinking, greater discipline, more deliberate action, they will unconsciously hold on to your presence. Even when you are absent, they will still consult you internally, because they have linked your influence with their own progress. Leaving this kind of imprint requires consistency. You cannot be unpredictable in your values one day and expect them to define you the next. People need to see your steadiness under pressure, your calm in conflict, and your fairness in judgment. Over time, that steadiness becomes your signature, and signatures do not fade quickly. This principle also works in the realm of strategy. When you have established yourself as someone who delivers results, who makes sharp decisions, or who speaks with authority, that reputation follows you. Even if you are not in a meeting, people will factor in what they think you would say or do before making a move. In effect, you have extended your influence into spaces you do not physically occupy, that is, reach without effort. Jung's work on archetypes helps explain this phenomenon. Once people have assigned you a role in their mental world, mentor, strategist, moral compass, that role continues to operate even without you. You become a symbolic figure in their thinking, and symbols are powerful because they can be summoned instantly. Excellence practiced as a habit leaves a residue. It sticks to the people around you. If you regularly demonstrate thoughtful problem solving, they will start approaching problems with more thoughtfulness themselves. If you consistently operate with integrity, they will weigh integrity more heavily in their own choices. Your habits become a model, and models survive absence. One way to strengthen this is to set clear expectations through your behavior, not just your words. If you are known for high standards, you do not have to be there to enforce them. People will meet them simply because they associate your name with excellence. This is how you train your presence into the system around you. The Stoics believed in living as though you were always being observed, not out of paranoia, but as a way to remain aligned with your own principles. When you live that way, the impression you make is so strong that your presence no longer depends on your physical body. You become an influence in people's minds, and influence in the mind is more enduring than influence in the moment. The beauty of this rule is that it compounds over time. The longer you live in alignment with your values, the deeper your presence roots itself in the people and systems you touch. You can walk away from a role, a team, or even a relationship, and still, your way of doing things will linger. This is not just about legacy. It is about leverage. When people continue to operate with your standards in mind, you maintain influence without effort. Your absence speaks for you, and in many cases it speaks louder than your presence ever could, because it forces people to recognize just how much you shaped their world. Rule 18. Never make a threat. Some of the most intimidating people you will ever meet are the ones who never raise their voice, never make dramatic declarations, and never issue a direct threat. They do not need to. Their power comes from leaving a space for your imagination to do the work. And the truth is, what the imagination can conjure is far more dangerous than anything they could ever say out loud. When people do not know exactly what you might do, they fill in the blanks themselves, and the possibilities they invent are almost always worse than reality. Threats are the language of the insecure, of those who need to announce their power just to feel it. The Stoic way is different. It is about remaining so steady, so deliberate, and so calm that your actions, or your inaction, shape how others see you. When you hold your cards close, you keep others off balance, because they cannot prepare for something they cannot define. People who never threaten have learned that real strength comes from control over their temper, their impulses, and their need to prove themselves. This is not passivity, it is patience. They know that the less they reveal, the more others will wonder, and that wondering itself becomes a source of power. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This applies to power as well. You do not need to correct people's assumptions about what you might or might not do. If someone underestimates you, let them. If someone tries to provoke you, do not respond in kind. Your silence, your lack of reaction, becomes the most unnerving thing in the room. When you refuse to engage, they have no idea what is coming next, or if anything is coming at all. Think of how this plays out in life. A boss who threatens to fire someone at every mistake eventually loses all credibility. But the boss who says nothing, who simply notes the error and moves on without visible reaction, often inspires more profound self-correction. The employee cannot stop thinking about what that silence means. It is the same in negotiations, relationships, or rivalries. The moment you openly state your intentions, you give the other person a map to prepare their defense. But when you keep them guessing, they are forced to prepare for everything, and in doing so, they exhaust themselves. Delay is the opposite of a threat. It is a pause that lets the other person's mind race ahead of you. In that space, fear grows naturally, without any effort on your part. By the time you do act, if you act at all, they have already built the narrative in their own mind, a narrative often more powerful than any action you could have taken. The beauty of never threatening is that it frees you from unnecessary escalation. You do not draw attention to your next move. You do not commit yourself to a course of action you might later regret. You simply hold your ground, let them speak, let them guess, and let them live with the uncertainty. That uncertainty keeps them cautious. It makes them hesitate. And in any form of competition or conflict, hesitation is where the advantage is won. In the end, unspoken power will always outlast a loud declaration. A threat dies the moment it is made. But the fear of the unknown, that can live on for weeks, months, or even years. The goal is not to frighten, but to remain so unreadable that others think twice before crossing you without you ever having to say a word. Rule 19. Delay your response. The first instinct, when wronged, is to react immediately, to defend yourself, to correct the insult, to counter the harm before it can spread. But quick reactions are rarely the most effective ones. They may satisfy your emotions in the moment, but they often come at the cost of strategy. The wiser path, though far more difficult, is to pause, to breathe, to wait for the right moment, when your response will not just be noticed, but felt and remembered. Your enemy may act on impulse, driven by anger, pride, or fear. But you can choose patience. The Stoics understood that emotional control is the foundation of all power. By delaying your response, you remove yourself from the emotional chaos of the moment and step into the clarity of calculation. This is the mindset of one who waits. On the surface, it may look like nothing is happening, but underneath, a new order is forming. Waiting gives you the chance to see the whole picture, how others react, where weaknesses emerge, and which opportunities reveal themselves naturally over time. By holding your reaction, you are doing more than just keeping calm. You are actively shaping the battlefield. When someone believes they have gotten away with harming you, they lower their guard. They relax. They stop protecting themselves from the consequences of their actions. And it is in that moment of their complacency, when they have convinced themselves they have won, that your response will have the most devastating impact. Think of the difference between a punch thrown in the heat of anger and a move made at the perfect time in a game of chess. The first is impulsive and predictable. The second is calculated, deliberate, and final. There is a kind of response that is deliberate, decisive, and, once made, impossible to take back. When you learn to delay your reaction, you gain the ability to act not as a street fighter, but as a chess master. Often, the situation itself will shift in your favor, strengthening your position without you ever lifting a finger. Sometimes, the person who wronged you will reveal more of their hand, or even trap themselves in their own missteps. Other times, a far more effective path of response will reveal itself, one you could never have seen in the heat of the moment. The true beauty of a delayed response lies in how it shifts the entire power dynamic. While your opponent may have felt in control initially, the longer you remain silent, the more uncertainty begins to creep into their mind. They are left to wonder, have you forgotten? Are you planning something? Will their actions eventually return to haunt them? That uncertainty is a pressure of its own, and it works entirely for you. When you finally choose to act, your move lands with multiplied impact. You are no longer reacting to them. You are making your own move on your own terms, with the full benefit of time, perspective, and precision. That is what makes it so devastating. Not because you sought to destroy them, but because you waited for the perfect moment to make a move that could not be undone. In the end, delaying your response isn't about passivity. It is an act of profound strength. It is the ability to value timing over impulse and strategy over ego. The Stoics would recognize this as the difference between being ruled by your emotions and ruling over them. And when you can rule your own reactions, you can so often shape the outcome of the entire game. Rule 20. Become a system, not just a person. Some people are valuable for what they can do in a given moment. They are skilled, dependable, and capable in a crisis. But the moment they walk away, their influence vanishes with them. Then there are those who operate on an entirely different plane. They don't just do the work. They design the way the work is done. They don't just offer advice. They shape the very way people think. Over time, their methods, Their patterns and their standards become so deeply ingrained in the environment that to remove them would be to break the structure itself. This is the point where you cease to be merely helpful or talented and become something far more powerful. You become the system. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What we do now echoes in eternity." A system is an echo. It continues to function long after the person who built it is gone. If your goal is to have a lasting influence, the kind that remains even when you are not in the room, you cannot rely on personality alone. Charisma fades with absence. Personal charm cannot be replicated. But a process, a standard, a framework, that is something others cannot help but follow because it is built into the very function of things. Becoming a system is not about branding or making grand promises. It is about action, repeated with such consistency that it becomes the new norm. When you operate with a discipline so unwavering that your way of doing things simply becomes the way of doing things, people unconsciously adopt your methods. They may not even realize they are following the structures you have built, but they are. And that is what makes your influence so difficult to remove. The Stoics understood this profoundly. Epictetus taught, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." To transform yourself into a system, you cannot simply tell people how things should be. You must model it, day after day, until it becomes instinctive for everyone around you. When this is done well, your influence no longer depends on constant reminders or direct involvement. It lives in the habits, the expectations, and the very rhythm of the environment. Think of the great leaders, teachers, or strategists you have known. The ones who left a permanent mark were not just memorable personalities. They left behind methods, rituals, and a mindset that continued to shape decisions long after they were gone. In a company, it might be a unique approach to problem solving that everyone now uses. In a family, a set of principles for handling conflict. On a team, a style of communication that has become second nature. If you wish to become a system, your excellence must be repeatable, teachable, and adaptable. It cannot remain locked inside your personal skill set. It must be something others can carry on without you. That is the difference between a specialist and a system builder. A specialist is valuable only while present. A system builder is valuable forever. From a strategic perspective, becoming a system also grants you immense leverage. When your way of doing things is so deeply embedded that removing you would disrupt the entire operation, you gain a security few others possess. People might replace an individual, but they will hesitate to dismantle the very framework that holds everything together. In this way, you become difficult not just to replace, but to even imagine functioning without. This taps into what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, patterns of thought bigger than any single person. A system creates a shared mental model that others use to navigate their reality. Once that model is established, it stops being yours in name, but remains yours in function. People stop seeing it as your way and start seeing it as the way. At that point, you have embedded yourself so completely that you are at once invisible and indispensable. This approach works in every sphere of life. A founder who becomes a system builds a company culture that thrives without them. A leader who becomes a system leaves behind institutions and policies that endure for decades. A parent who becomes a system instills values and traditions that shape their family for generations. And here lies the true power. Once you have become a system, you no longer have to push to maintain your influence. The structure you built carries its own momentum. Others will defend it, protect it, and sustain it, often more fiercely than you would, because it has become their normal, and it now serves them. Building yourself into a system is slow and difficult work. It demands repetition, patience, and a long-term vision. But once it is in place, the rewards are permanent. Your influence transforms from a fleeting presence into an enduring framework, and a framework is far harder to remove than any individual could ever be. Ultimately, becoming a system is about shifting from personal importance to structural importance. When you achieve that, you are no longer asking people to value you. You have made yourself the foundation of what they already value. And when you are part of the foundation, removing you isn't just an inconvenience. It risks bringing the whole structure down. That is a position of quiet, unshakable power. Rule 21. Let your name work for you. True power is when you no longer have to announce yourself. You don't have to remind people of who you are, what you have done, or what you are capable of, because your name has already done that work for you. It arrives in a room before you do. It changes the tone of a conversation. It shapes expectations. Sometimes it can silence the room entirely. And when your name carries weight, people handle it differently. They avoid saying it casually. They might lower their voices when it comes up, not because they've forgotten it, but because they understand that to speak it is to invoke something that carries consequences. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by." This is not just about morality. It is about the lived consistency of your character. The weight your name carries is forged by your actions, not your words. People remember the moments you showed strength when it was hard, the decisions you made under pressure, the way you treated others when you had nothing to gain. Over time, these moments become the story of your name. You cannot talk your way into having a name that matters. You must live your way into it. Every time you follow through on your word, every time you choose discipline over comfort, every time you deliver when it counts, you add another layer of substance to your name. People begin to attach expectations to it, and those expectations, good or bad, spread far beyond the reach of your own voice. If you want your name to stand for excellence, integrity, precision, or resilience, you must first decide on that in private, long before the world ever sees it. And once you have decided, you must live in a way so consistent that those qualities become inseparable from your name in the minds of others. When your name works for you, it does more than open doors. It changes how people approach you. They think twice before wasting your time. They prepare more carefully before bringing you ideas. They reconsider speaking against you unless they are absolutely certain of their position. Sometimes, they will avoid opposing you altogether, not because you have threatened them, but because they know your track record. This is a form of quiet leverage that no amount of loudness can ever match. With a strong name, you no longer crave constant recognition. You can move more quietly, make fewer public gestures, and still command influence, because that influence is carried by the memory of who you are. Your name becomes self-sustaining. Jung's concept of the archetype explains this on a deep psychological level. Once your name becomes symbolic, representing a certain quality, role, or authority, it ceases to be a mere label and becomes a mental trigger. Mentioning your name evokes not just the idea of you, but all the emotional associations and past experiences tied to you. This is why the most powerful names can inspire deep loyalty in some and profound fear in others. They have become more than a person. They have become an idea. Building such a name takes time and patience. It requires consistency under all conditions, not just when it is easy. People watch what you do when no one is watching. They remember how you behave when you are losing just as much as when you are winning. They take note of how you treat those with less power. Every one of these moments is a brushstroke on the canvas of your name. And when you have painted enough of them in the same hue, the final picture becomes unmistakable. When you reach this point, your physical presence becomes optional for your influence to be felt. The mere mention of your name can alter the course of a conversation. Opportunities may come to you unsought, and conflicts may resolve in your favor without you lifting a finger, because the weight of your name alone is enough to tip the scales. In the end, letting your name work for you is the highest form of sustainable influence. It is the point at which you no longer have to push to be seen or heard, because your history speaks for you. It is where your name has moved beyond something you own and has become something that owns a place in the minds, and sometimes the fears, of others. The Stoics would call this the natural result of a life lived in alignment with virtue. And once you have it, you will realize you have built something far stronger than fame or popularity. You have built a legacy that moves, even when you are standing still. Power is not just about what you do when the world is watching. It is about the quiet discipline, the unseen choices, and the lasting mark you leave on others. The Stoics knew this. True strength is built in silence, and it endures long after the moment has passed. If these words resonated with you, there is another video on your screen now that will take you even deeper into the art of living with clarity, resilience, and purpose. Watch it next, and continue to sharpen the mind that shapes your life. Thank you for being part of Stoic Journal, where ancient wisdom becomes your daily advantage.